respectable members of the opposition, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. First of all, before starting this debate, before backing up our position, I'd like to make things clear. We're not here to state that there should be no universal standard. We are here to state a fact. The fact that there is no universal moral code. Maybe there should be one, but that's not our topic. Second, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to allow me to define what a moral standard is. A moral standard is what we refer to usually as the golden rule. The golden rule that sets and draws a line, a limit line, between what is good and what is bad, between what is right and what is wrong, between what is accepted in society and what is not. Now, honorable members of the opposition, when you tell me that individual representation of the world, representation of what is right and what is wrong is universal, that means you are claiming that this representation is shared by each and every one in this room, that this representation is actually shared by every human being over the globe. Now, we clearly know that this is false, it is biased. It is biased, why? Because we human beings are different. We're different in terms of culture, in terms of religion, in terms of background, in terms of education. Let's start by background. If we take two members of the same family, a brother and a sister, we'll find out that they are different. They come from the same family, but they are different. Second example, education. Ladies and gentlemen, education differs from one state to another, from one country to another. In fact, ladies and gentlemen, education differs from one city to another within the same country. We're different. And you, honorable members of the opposition, tell me that out of all of these differences, there is a universal moral standard? Let me give some examples in order to back up our position. And I'm going to start by human rights. Human rights, ladies and gentlemen, we all agree they're great. It's a great invention of the human race. However, let's go back to the Declaration of Human Rights that was drafted, ratified, signed, and approved by the members of the United Nations. And let me tell you that the Declaration of Human Rights is merely a product of the majority, a majority vote, which means that as I speak, ladies and gentlemen, there are members of the United Nations, there are other countries all over the world that do not accept these human rights, that violate these human rights. Why? Because they don't believe they're universal. Because even if the United Nations think them to be universal, they think they are relative. Second example, ladies and gentlemen, which I find very illustrative, capital punishment. Ladies and gentlemen, capital punishment is said to be morally wrong in many countries over the world, but America thinks it's right. Why do we think that moral judgment is right or wrong? If it was, there would be no universal standard. Thank you.
Good evening, the Republic. Good morning, good evening, the member of the jury. Good evening, your opponent. So, our opponent are just saying that there is no universal moral standard in the world. That is not true. Take an example, cheating. We are all cheating. You are shooting dance, cheating in all the world. You go in Morocco, cheating is not accepted in Morocco. You go in the United States of America, cheating is not accepted in Morocco, in the United States. All the So I was taking the example of cheating. Cheating, we all know that we are students, and cheating in Morocco is not acceptable. You cheat, that is no, you know that it's not morally acceptable. You go in the United States of America, you know that it's not acceptable. And you telling me that there is no why. I'll prove you there is why. You say there is no one single universal standard, moral standard. There is one. When you take an example of human rights. So you mean that killing people in a country is not acceptable in a country. You go in the United States and they will say, we kill people, it's acceptable. You go in the other, it's human, we call it morally acceptable. When you go in the street and you yell, you scream, it's not acceptable in the society. You go in another city, you go in Europe, you go in the street and you yell to people. It's not morally acceptable. It's human. There is one, it's human, it's moral, it's a universal moral standard. There are a lot of facts. When you take adultery, for example, when you cheat, adultery, we all know that adultery is not acceptable. You go in all the nations in the world, it's not acceptable. And we say here that people are not the same. When you take the example of golden rule, what is the golden rule? Golden rule also said that you should treat people as they would like to be treated. So, and there is a fact that is totally different. When you take an example, what is universally acceptable? There are a lot of facts that is human rights. Human rights, when you say, what is the human rights say? All men are created equal in right, they have the right to live, they have the right to go to school. When you take children, you're saying in Morocco, children should go to school. Of course they should go to school. So if I take your example, and I'm going to what law analyze, that means that if in Morocco children should go to school, in other nations, it's not morally acceptable that these children should go to school. That's what you mean. There are a lot of factors, there are a lot of mean. That's what you mean. You mean you take an example of people are not equal. Yes, of course, people are not equal, but they are equal in right. They are equal to life.
Excuse me, honorable members of the opposition. I would just like to note that please don't put words in my mouth. I did not say that children in Morocco should go to school. Children in Morocco should go to school in America. Sorry.
I did not. I just say I'm going to what you analyze. That's what I say. And to what you analyze, it means that children here, if they go to school, it's acceptable. But if in another country they go to school, it's not acceptable. There are a lot of factors. When you take stealing robbery, we all know stealing is forbidden. It's morally not acceptable. In all the nations, stealing is not acceptable at all. No matter you're in the US, no matter you go to Europe, no matter you go in Africa, in all the nations in the world, stealing, robbery, cheating are not at all acceptable. There is one fact, one only fact, there is one.
Mrs. President, honorable judges and audience. Now, the speech that my opponent delivered is quite exquisite, but is not realistic to a certain extent. Now, let me just clarify the errors he made when analyzing this. Your approach is very wrong, because when you say that cheating or going to school is something that is universally accepted and there is universally moral, you are being wrongly misled by the fact that certain morals are not morals and universal morals, but in fact they are our representation, our moral representation of the wrong and right. They are triggered by our cultural upbringing and the conditions in which we grew in. So,
there is no, in all the nations. So you mean that there are shaped by our country. They're not shaped by our country. Chile. We don't need to have another country, the type of country, to know that Chile is not right. The other nation is not acceptable.
Okay, thank you. Cheating now can be wrongfully said that it is not accepted all around the world. But let's take, for instance, the evolution theory. We have reached to ideals coming from the evolution. What was something that is convenient for us as groups of people to preserve our species and live peacefully together has become ideal. So this moral ideal has been generalized by globalization in which we live today. Let's take, for example, the senseless killing example. What the whole humanity agrees on is that killing or cheating, for instance, is wrong. That is not what's wrong. What's wrong is baseless cheating, a baseless. We need to investigate furthermore on the motive and the basis of this act. Now, let me give you an example that happened in the 16th century. So back in the 16th century, there has been a ship, commercial English ship, that has sunk in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. And there has been 4 member crews who survived this wreckage. Now, when they survived in the tiny lifeboat saving, they ran out of food, so they agreed on playing a game, the shortest straw game, in which if you put short straw, you would have to die for the other members to survive by eating your flesh. Now, only one survivor made it back to England, and he was sentenced for killing and cannibalism and eating human flesh. But if today this event happened or occurred, I highly doubt that this person would be even prosecuted. In fact, he would be a nation's hero because he made it from surviving a sinking of a ship, and he made it whilst his country. Ladies and gentlemen, there is no wrong or right. There is just mental representation of what we think is wrong or right. And thank you.
Intervention.
Well, you said that there was no universal standard, and then you went on and you said that it's about good and what's wrong. And then you said something about a brother and a sister and how they would be different and they wouldn't think right? And if they don't go to the same school, then they would not think the same. Right? You said something about that? About moral standard? Anyways, well, if they don't go to the same school, the only thing different would be about them is what they study, the subjects they study. Actually, human rights that are happening right now are all over the world. We all follow the same human rights. And if someone violates your rights, they will be punished anywhere in the world. The story you said was actually amusing. There's a lot of other stories about that. I don't know if, excuse me?
I would just like to explain something. You have said that all over the world, if you do something wrong, you are punished. Let me give you an example. In Turkey, when a woman has sex, with a man that is not her husband, her father can kill her and he's not punished.
Well, that goes into religion. That's a completely different story. Not all countries have the same religion. And that's from the way back. If someone is not a virgin, they'll still kill them. That's a completely different topic. Another way, you said about if he kills other people and he eats them, he would not be prosecuted. Well, I'm not sure if he won't be prosecuted. Yeah, actually it stops working sometimes. But that goes into like laws and stuff, so we're not going to go into that. The idea that there is a universal moral code does sound far-fetched. Yet, the Harvard psychologist Mark Hauser and several other scientists have recently claimed that contrary to the appearance, there really is a universal moral standard. The scientific discovery will change the way we think about ethics. A universal code exists because of globalization. It has transformed the whole modern world beyond recognition. Through flow of technologies, capital, goods, recession, values, knowledge, and people, it is profoundly manifested in various forms of social activity, including economic, political, cultural differences, and life. This has led to worldwide interconnectedness. Globalization has made it able for us to talk to people way across the world, and we know how we live. So we respect that, and they respect how we live. Just cultural differences, the laws still stay the same. If you kill someone, you go to jail. Wrong is wrong, and right is right, and everybody knows this. This is universal moral standard. You can't go against it, no fact whatsoever. What I'm saying is, moral standard, we kind of grow up with this thing. We grow up with killing is wrong, cheating is wrong, stealing is wrong. Everybody, anywhere you go, thinks the same way. This is universal moral standard. Another thing I wanted to say is, when you meet people from different countries, different continents, you still can connect with them. This is because of universal moral standard. This is what it has done to us. This is globalization. This is the way we live. In other words, nothing you say can say that this actually doesn't exist. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, members of the government. Thank you, members of the opposition.